There is a kind of pain that doesn't come from a fight, doesn't come from betrayal, doesn't come from something you can point to and say, "That's why." It comes from silence. It comes when someone who is part of your routine simply disappears, without explanation, without goodbye, without a clear ending. Yesterday there were conversations, laughter, plans, presence. Today only absence. And what hurts most is not just the lack of the person, it's the lack of answers. Because when there is no explanation, the mind creates one. You replay everything, every message, every action, every detail. You ask yourself, where did I go wrong? Did I say too much? Was I not enough? Could I have done something differently? But what if there was no mistake? What if the departure wasn't caused by failure, but by purpose? There is something difficult to accept, but necessary to understand. Not everyone who enters your life was sent to stay. Some people are a passage, others are a lesson, and only a few are destiny. And maybe what you are trying to understand as a loss is actually a realignment you cannot yet see. So today I want to invite you to look at this pain differently. Because maybe what left your life didn't leave to hurt you, but to protect you. When someone leaves without explanation, what weighs the most is not only the absence, it's the expectation that remained. Because deep down, you don't just lose a person. You lose everything you imagined living with them. Plans that never happened. Conversations that never continued. Moments that existed only in your mind. And that's what confuses the heart. You begin to feel as if you lost something extremely valuable. But maybe you didn't lose what was real. You lost what was expected. Expectation grows deep roots. It makes you believe that connection was destiny, when maybe it was just a season. And when that season ends without warning, the pain comes strongly, because it feels unfinished. But here is a truth few accept. Not everything that seemed forever was meant to be permanent. Some connections didn't come to stay. They came to fulfill a purpose and leave. There is something hard to accept. Not every connection that touches your heart deeply was made to remain. Some people arrive intensely, present, impactful, memorable, but not permanent. The problem is that we confuse intensity with eternal purpose. We feel deeply, we get involved, we create bonds, and automatically believe it has to last. But not everything that is deep is permanent. Some people are seasons. They pass through, leave something behind, and move on. Others are bridges. They take you from one place to another, but they do not walk the entire journey with you. And only a few are permanents. When you treat someone who was a season as if they were destiny, the pain of their departure becomes much greater, because you are not just dealing with an ending. You are dealing with the collapse of a story you believed would continue. But maybe it was never meant to continue. Maybe it was only meant to teach, to mark you, and to prepare you for what is still to come. When someone leaves your life without explanation, the first feeling is injustice. It feels like something was interrupted too soon, as if a response is missing, a closure, one last conversation. But what if it wasn't an interruption, but an intervention? There is something we must face with spiritual maturity. Not every departure is a loss. Some are deliverance. Others are alignment. God sees what you cannot yet see. He knows paths, influences, decisions, and consequences that are beyond your reach. Sometimes the person who seemed so right was no longer aligned with who you are becoming. And without realizing it, you would begin to shrink yourself to keep that connection. Lower your intensity. Silence parts of yourself. Ignore signs, just to avoid losing them. But God does not negotiate your growth, so He does what you might not have had the courage to do. He removes, not because the person was bad, but because they were no longer compatible with the next phase of your life. And as hard as it is to accept, There is a liberating truth. God does not remove to hurt you. He removes to protect what is still coming. Now there is an even deeper point that must be confronted honestly. Not everything you feel is love. Sometimes it is attachment. And attachment traps, confuses, and distorts. Because when someone leaves and you feel like you lost the ground beneath you, that reveals something important. Maybe that person occupied a place they never should have. You didn't feel only affection. You felt need. And there is a silent but powerful difference between loving someone and depending on someone. Love is free. Attachment is disguised emptiness. Love builds. Attachment tries to hold on. And when that connection breaks, the pain doesn't come only from their absence. It comes from the collapse of the emotional structure you built around them. You don't lose just someone. You lose the feeling of safety, of validation, of constant presence. But here is the truth that transforms. God does not allow your stability to be placed in something that can leave, because whatever can leave cannot be your foundation. Maybe this departure is teaching you to rebuild your identity, to find security in what is eternal, and to stop placing people at the center of a place that belongs only to God. There is something that hurts more than absence: silence. Because when someone leaves without explanation, what remains is not only emptiness, but unanswered questions. And the human heart was not designed to live with stories without closure. You want to understand. You want to close the cycle. You want one last conversation that makes sense. But not every ending comes with an explanation. And maybe that is the hardest thing to accept. Because while you wait for answers, God is working in another area: your trust. Trust is not remaining firm when everything makes sense. Trust is continuing even when nothing is explained. Maybe you are trying to rationalize something that was spiritual. Not every departure needs to be understood at the moment it happens. Some things only make sense after you grow. And here is the key point. Closure does not always come from the other person. It comes from you. It comes when you decide to stop searching for answers where there will be no return. It comes when you accept that not everything will be explained. It comes when you choose to trust, even without understanding. Because spiritual maturity is this: not demanding human explanations for processes God conducted in silence. Now there is an even deeper and perhaps the most confronting truth of all. Sometimes someone leaving your life reveals not only something about them, it reveals something about you. It reveals how much space that presence occupied within you. It reveals how much your emotional stability was supported by something unstable. Because when someone leaves, and you feel like you lost the ground beneath you, maybe that person became more than companionship. They became your foundation. And emotional foundation cannot be placed in someone who can leave. If your peace depends on someone staying, then your peace is vulnerable. And God does not build security on something that can be removed. Maybe this departure is teaching you something essential: to strengthen your inner structure, to stop depending on constant validation, to stop placing anyone at the center of your identity, to learn that love is not dependency, because there is a difference between loving someone and needing someone to feel whole. And maybe God is taking you to a level where your stability no longer comes from outside, but from within, where your identity is not sustained by presence, but by purpose. And that does not diminish you. It strengthens you. Now we reach one of the hardest things to deal with: silence. Because it is not only the silence of the one who left. Often it feels like the silence of God. You pray. You ask. You try to understand. And no clear answer comes. And that unsettles the heart. But maybe silence is not the absence of an answer. Maybe it is an invitation to trust, because trusting is not understanding everything. It is remaining firm even when you understand nothing. Not every spiritual process comes with immediate explanations. Sometimes the answer only comes when the pain no longer controls you, and maybe God is working on something deeper than you imagine, shaping your maturity, strengthening your faith, teaching you to remain, without depending on answers, because those who only trust when they understand have not yet learned to rest. And maybe today God is not giving you explanations. He is teaching you to trust anyway. Now I want you to look at all of this differently. What if what left your life was not a loss, but a realignment? You did not lose who was meant to stay. You only saw leave who was not meant to continue. Because when something truly belongs to your purpose, it is not interrupted at the decisive moment. It may be tested, but it is not removed without reason. Maybe what God did was protect you from something you were not yet able to see, and even if you don't understand now, an adjustment is taking place. So here is your position. Do not chase what God has removed. Do not romanticize what has already ended. Do not try to reopen cycles that have already been closed. Instead, grow. If this message spoke to you, right? I accept the realignment. Subscribe to the Sacred Silence channel. Like and share. And never forget, in the noise of the world, God still speaks in the silence.